Aloha! Welcome back to the Anxiety Coaches Podcast. I'm your host and coach, Gina Ryan, and I'm so happy to be with you again today as we consider the many ways to bring your mind and body back to its natural peace and calm. In today's episode, I want to talk about anxiety and the grief process. We've all heard about the 5 stages of grief from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and also David Kessler talks a lot about the grief process. And I want to guide you to his website right off the bat here. If you find that after we talk about this a little bit, you want to go deeper into the grief, you can check out his website. It's easy to remember, grief.com, and it's David Kessler. He wrote a very interesting book entitled The 6th Stage of Grief, because like I said, we typically talk about the 5 stages of grief, but his book is titled Finding Meaning, the 6th Stage of Grief. And I find that so interesting because that is exactly what happens, right? After we've come through the grief process, which never really ends, but after we have been through that, we find meaning. So anyway, great things for you to check out to move further and go deeper, and those links will be in the show notes for you. I have some notes here that I wanted to go over with you about the 5 stages of grief, and you can find a lot of this on the grief.com website. Because again, we've talked about these 5 stages for a long time. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has been the expert on this, and it's very important that we talk about this now because we are all globally experiencing grief. Of course, we will all handle it in our own way, handling it differently as each individual, going through the different stages at our own times and our own pace. And there's no real order here. This is just the order we will talk about them, but you can go back and go through again. And so let's just look today at the 5 stages and what they are. It may be helpful for you to realize what you are feeling is very appropriate. You are not off base. And you don't have to be worried that you're falling off the edge or you're falling apart. I'm getting a lot of emails asking questions about that. So let's dive in a little bit here and start. I'll give you the 5 right off the bat, and then we'll talk about each one individually and how it might be relating to your anxiety, especially if you didn't know why you were feeling this way. So see if you can give yourself a break here. The first one would be denial, and then anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and that is what we are going to be talking about today. Let's start with denial and get a little bit of what this denial word means under our belt here. And it is considered the first of the 5 stages of grief. Denial is something that is not negative or bad or something we should avoid. It actually helps us to survive the loss. In this stage of denial, the world can feel meaningless and overwhelming, and some of you may be experiencing that right now. Life just doesn't seem to make any sense. This is a stage of grief. This is denial. We are in a state of perhaps shock, but definitely denial. We go numb. If that's how you are feeling, be easy on yourself. This is to be expected with all that is happening in the world right now. We wonder how we can go on, or even if we can go on, or why we should go on. There's a lot of that kind of feeling going on. I'm getting emails from people really not feeling well, really questioning what they are to do next. They feel somewhat useless. and unable to do something appropriate or that can really make a difference. But denial helps us to pace our feelings of grief. It's a way of not having to eat the elephant all in one bite. It slows us down. It gives us a chance to go at our own given pace. This is going to be different for different people. And so there's a lot of grace in denial, if you think about it. It's actually nature's way of letting in only as much as you can handle at one time. And that's why this is going to vary from person to person. So pay attention to how you're feeling. And as you accept the reality of loss, we're all experiencing loss right now, and start to ask yourself questions, understand that you are at the beginning of a healing process. You're becoming stronger, and the denial will begin to fade. But as you go forward, all of the feelings that you were denying will start to surface as you can handle them. So again, this first piece was the most important, I believe, because it sets us up to be kind, to go at the pace we need to go at, and to not feel like you are wrong in any way. The second stage is anger. And anger is obviously a necessary stage in this healing process, this grief process. So I want you to really pay attention to if anger is bubbling up and, be willing to feel it. Again, we need to be careful what we do with our anger. That's our responsibility. But as you are feeling it, even though the anger may seem endless, just know it is a part of a process. And that the more that you feel it, the more it will begin to dissipate and you will again be healing. There are a lot of emotions that hide under anger, and you'll get to them as you move forward. But anger is the emotion that we are most used to managing, so it pops up. It's the one we can really identify easily. The truth is that anger has no limits, and we all experience anger. And it can extend not only to your friends, your family, yourself, your loved ones, the world at large, the people who are running the show as we see it, and even to God. I mean, you may be asking yourself really big questions around that with anger. And underneath anger is pain. So it's natural for you to feel these feelings right now and to feel the anger about what is happening. So again, along with the first one of denial, let yourself be sure to be kind about feeling the anger. Yes, it's okay to feel it. You don't have to hide it, but you are responsible for what you do with it, but it's okay to be feeling it. It is acceptable and it is reasonable at this time as you are going through the grieving process. Now let's get back on to the grief here, the stages of grief, and this is a big process. And we started with denial, then we went to anger, and now we're at bargaining. This may be somewhat familiar. You may have felt this. Like before loss, it seems like you'll do anything if you could only feel okay, like with a lot of people go through this with their anxiety, that bargaining, or if you've had an illness, and you'll kind of make a deal with God or your higher power or yourself, right? And after the loss, so after we've experienced a big change or a big loss, you may feel like, what if I can help others? What if I could wake up and realize this was just a bad dream? We go to the what ifs or the only if or if onlys, those statements, they can really take us down the rabbit hole. So we want to be careful with the bargaining. If only, what if this, what if that? And I know you guys know the what ifs. And we want life to return to how it was. This is our bargaining. What if I do this, will everything be okay? And we want life to be restored back to normal again. We want to go back in time. And we want to remember that going back in time is like going forward in time with anxiety. It's not the present moment. So the bargaining is a place that we all go. We're looking to make a deal, but these are just stages. We don't stay there forever. So don't be feeling that you're falling down the wormhole or you're a terrible person because you're trying to strike a deal with God. This is something we all go through, and we don't enter and leave each of these individual stages in a linear fashion. We may feel one and then another and go back again, back and forth, because that's part of the process. It's healing us little by little by little. The next one is depression. This is something many of you are already familiar with, but we have all in our lives had times where we have had depressed moods. And after we've done bargaining, our attention can move into the present, and we can feel empty in that present moment. And the grief enters our life on a deeper and deeper level, deeper than we may have imagined. This is why I want to encourage you that you may want to reach out for help, because there's nothing wrong with that. It can really help you become even more of who you already are, and it can actually help you find more meaning in life. So just remember, we go into these stages and out of them again, and that we are not going to do this in a linear fashion. It's kind of like our anxiety dance. We move forward a little bit. We work on some things. We have a lot of strength and courage, and then we're tired and maybe we fall back into some things. That's okay. It's all part of the process. Be kind to yourself, be gentle, and know that all of those around you may also be struggling with this and in their own place in this grief process. The final one in the 5 stages of grief is acceptance. And acceptance, as we talk about it here, is the same way that it's talked about in the grief process. It does not mean that everything is all right or you are okay with what has happened. That is not acceptance. That is kind of fooling ourselves or lying to ourselves, because we're not really feeling that. We don't feel okay with what's happening. We don't feel okay with what we've lost. Even if it's only temporary, we don't at our core really know that. So this stage is about accepting the reality of what is. And the reality of what is right now is quite difficult. And dealing with the uncertainty of that, accepting that there is uncertainty. We don't know if it will go back to the way it was before. And if it were to, we don't know when that might be. So it's important that we don't take it literally, that acceptance is that everything's okay and we accept it and we move on. Acceptance is coming back into the present moment and dealing with that. We can accept the present moment. We don't have to go back and want things to be how they were, and we don't have to go forward and dream up all the scary scenarios that an anxious mind can dream up. We have to come to accept that we may learn that we have to reorganize our lives a bit, that we have to take on different roles in our lives, that our environments are different. And finding acceptance may be just having more good days than bad ones as we learn to be able to be in the present moment. We see the beauty and the joy of those moments versus trying to control an outcome that is definitely uncertain. we can have peace and we can move through this grieving process as we are moving through our anxiety process. And just know that it's okay and that it'll take some time. And if you want more information on that, I would suggest reading some literature, reading on David Kessler's website, grief.com. And you can check out that website in the show notes. We all need help at times like this. We all do. And I want you guys to know I am here for you. And now for today's quote. When we face the worst that can happen in any situation, we grow. When circumstances are at their worst, we can find our best. And that's from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler. I'll be back in a few more days with another podcast. Until then, be well and aloha.